lift the quorum call.
Without objection, so ordered.
Mr. President, I rise today to speak about the looming August 2nd deadline. This is when the Department of the Treasury estimates that the federal government will officially hit the $14.2 trillion debt ceiling. We all know that we are at the point where we are because we have a fundamental difference in principle on how our government should be run. At the same time, most agree that our country cannot go into default. So, we are in a very tough situation with a very short time period. That's why I am concerned about the delay that has happened on this issue. Delay means harm, harm to Americans and harm to our economic recovery, especially as we grapple with a 9.2% unemployment rate, which is the elephant in the room. We must address employment if we are going to have an economy that is thriving and say that we are in a recovery period. A jobless recovery is not a recovery. The administration's reluctance to resolve this crisis has brought the very real potential of a downgrade in our country's AAA bond rating. As we get closer to next Tuesday, Standard & Poor's and Moody's and other rating agencies await the details of the final debt agreement. Then they will determine if our nation's AAA credit rating will be downgraded. The implications of the rating could affect consumers at a very bad time. It could include a rise in interest rates on home loans, on small business loans, on student loans, and credit cards. Yesterday, the stock market fell nearly 200 points, a 1.6% drop. That was the third straight day of stock market decline. It leaves the Dow Jones Industrial Average down 3.3% and nearly on track for its worst week since August of 2010. The threat of a downgrade is also hurting our dollar. The dollar's value fell and hit a new 2011 low against the Japanese yen and a record low against the Swiss franc. Two things are clear. First, uncertainty and anxiety are prevalent domestically and in the global markets. Second, this anxiety underscores the fact that we need to address our debt ceiling and deficit reduction simultaneously. While the fundamental principles on which we base our solutions to this crisis are vastly different, I do believe that both sides of the aisle in Congress and both houses in Congress share the same goal. The Senate Majority Leader and the House Speaker have put forward plans. I believe that we must find a common ground between the House and the Senate with the proposals that have been put out by the Group of Six, by the Majority Leader, by the Minority Leader on our side, as well as on the Speaker on the House side. There have been a lot of proposals, and there are good parts in several of these proposals that we need to come together and find the best parts that we can agree on, knowing that we are a divided Congress and a divided government, and move forward to a conclusion. We can get meaningful, immediate spending cuts as well as caps on future spending. That would be very, very important. It would be an important achievement. It would be a major step forward because that's not where we were when we started. Spending cuts and caps on future spending would be a major step in the right direction. We can allow the debt limit to increase in proportion to the cuts, the real cuts. We can do this without tax hikes because the fact is the idea that we can tax our way out of debt has been completely repudiated. So we can cut spending, we can cap future spending, we can raise the debt limit in accordance with those caps, and without any new taxes. That is a significant achievement as well. because certainly the President was talking about increasing taxes, increasing taxes, increasing taxes when this whole negotiation began. But we have, on our side, stood firm against new taxes, knowing that this is a very fragile economic time in our country, and if we want people to be hired, if we want the unemployment rate to come down, we cannot saddle our small businesses with new taxes. So, Mr. President, we can send a clear message to the markets and to our debtors that we can stop spending too much, we won't need to tax anymore, and we certainly do not want to overborrow and have the drag that we see on our economy. Americans know that in Washington we are spending too much, we're taxing plenty, and we are borrowing too much. But there is more that we can do, and that's what is in the plan that is going to be voted on by the House tonight, and it is in the plans that have come before the Senate and probably will come before the Senate sometime this weekend, and that is entitlements. Mr. President, we will not get to a balanced budget without looking at entitlements, because the discretionary spending is such a small part of our total budget. Our entitlement programs are the major part of the need for reform. Our entitlement programs are nearly bankrupt. If left unchanged, our promises to current and future beneficiaries will be broken. Mandatory spending is the long-term driver of our debt problems. For example, according to the Congressional Budget Office, the federal government spends approximately $2.1 trillion a year on entitlement programs, about two-thirds of our total federal budget. I have introduced a bill, the Defend and Save Social Security Act, that will put that program, that very important program for seniors, on a fiscally sound path without cutting core benefits and not raising taxes on the people who are paying in right now. My proposal will cover a 75-year shortfall, and anyone who is currently 58 years old will have no effect whatsoever in the gradual increase in retirement age. The beginning of the increase in retirement age would start by people who are under 58, and then it would be only 3 months a year. So if you're 57, you would only retire 3 months later. And if you're 56, it would be 6 months later to start on Social Security. The Senate Majority Leader, the House Speaker have offered proposals that call for a bipartisan, bicameral congressional committee to fix the fiscal imbalance in our nation's finances. It is imperative that this committee, if it is passed by both houses of Congress, confront entitlement reform. Entitlement reform is at the core of any long-term solution to our nation's financial problems. And if we act now, we can make progress in a very gradual way, and if we wait, it's going to be much more stark and much more problematic for people who depend on Social Security or Medicare. The opportunity to raise our debt ceiling is a defining moment in the future of our government. Let us today confront the problem and not delay the inevitable. The more we delay, the harder it is going to be, and we have seen how hard it is already. We know this has not been an easy process because the talks between the White House and members of Congress have fallen apart. Talks between members of Congress on both sides of the rotunda have fallen apart. We know this has been hard. So let's try to act now to stop it from being harder in the future, which it will be if we don't address these entitlement reforms with our problems. I support a two-step approach. Let us take the first major step, the almost $1 trillion down payment. That is the first step for all of us, to cut spending about $1 trillion. And then the second step is the more long-term deficit reduction program that would look for the ways to cut more spending over a 10-year period and to address entitlement reform that would gradually cut some of the increases in entitlements that could be done in a gradual way, but without touching the core benefits. That can be done if we act now. If we don't, it will not be able to be done. The financial viability of our country is at stake. The time is here, it is past here, to take the necessary steps to get our fiscal house in order. And I implore my colleagues to take those steps now. Thank you, Mr. President, and I yield the floor.
President.
The senior senator from California is recognized.
Thank you very much. Mr. President, I ask unanimous consent that two fellows in Senator Rockefeller's office, Dale Orth and Janice Phillips, be granted floor privileges during consideration of S-123.
Without objection, so ordered.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. Mr. President, I've served in this body for 19 years. And I would say I have never been more dismayed, more concerned, or more frustrated than I have been these past few days. And every day it gets a little bit worse because day by day our country grows closer to defaulting on our sovereign debt, something that has never, ever happened in the history of this country. And the repercussions of this protracted and public debate on whether our government will honor its financial obligations are already evident. So this is what we know for sure. The stock market has seen several days of decline as investors sell off securities. The United States is at high risk of a credit downgrade. Gold prices are climbing as people try to protect themselves from a ratings downgrade and a drop in the value of the dollar. In short, default may well have catastrophic economic consequences domestically and internationally. And what is the message we are communicating to the world? Secretary Clinton told me in an evening conversation I had with her, she had just returned from visiting 5 countries, and she said everybody was asking her, what is wrong in your country? What are you going to do? So this is now a worldwide crisis, and one that we must address. What we are seeing here is, in a sense, a broken government that can't take care of the affairs of its people in a prudent and practical way. It is absolutely amazing to me that 20 to 70 members of the House of Representatives believe they can run the government of the United States, despite the fact that the presidency and the majority in the United States Senate are controlled by another party. Essentially, they appear willing to allow this great nation to default rather than compromise and reach a practical solution. So what are the consequences of default for American families? For sure, default would raise interest rates, driving up costs for everyone. For sure, the cost of owning a home, buying a car, buying food, filling a gas tank, sending children to college will even become more expensive, squeezing already tight family budgets and damaging this fragile economy. Many people predict a second dip recession. But in essence, default causes an immediate tax increase in the form of these rising interest rates on families. The talk of default is disrupting financial markets and will trigger a sharp fall in the stock market, causing huge losses in retirement accounts and wiping out the gains of 2 years. This morning, I saw a TV story about a man who is selling his mutual funds because he has no confidence in our ability to resolve this crisis. Not a good thing to do. Higher interest rates will also drive up costs for both the federal and state governments, because every 1% increase in interest payments for the federal government means an additional $100 billion cost to the government. Default will be devastating for state governments that would see their borrowing costs dramatically increase, because their ability to borrow is tied to the interest rates paid by the federal government. The cost of borrowing for states, for municipalities, for local water districts will all rise. Let me give you an example. My own state of California recently took out a $5.4 billion loan from 5 major investment banks ahead of a possible default to insure itself against rising interest rates. Here's the 6th largest economy on earth worried that their interest rates are going to jump, so they take out a $5 billion loan from investment banks to be able to meet any increased interest on obligations owed. For the broader economy, default would mean hundreds of thousands of jobs lost every year, according to the Federal Reserve. Chairman Bernanke has said, and I quote, "The economy may be thrown into reverse and employers would start cutting jobs if Congress fails to raise the nation's legal borrowing authority." Now, I've heard some say that on August 3rd, the Treasury will still have enough money to meet our obligations and avoid default. That is simply false. According to the Bipartisan Policy Center, the United States government has $306.7 billion in payments due in August and will take in an estimated $172.4 billion in revenue for the month. That's a $134 billion shortfall for the month of August. So the Treasury will not be able to pay its bills. In other words, 44% of United States government bills will go unpaid if the federal government fails to raise the debt ceiling by the August 2nd deadline. Treasury would be forced to spend all income inflows covering just 6 major items: interest, Medicare, Medicaid, Social Security, unemployment insurance, and defense vendors. That would mean entire federal departments would have no funds, including Justice, Labor, and Commerce. It would mean no funds for veterans benefits, active duty military pay, IRS refunds, special education, Pell Grants, and more. There is simply no way to escape it. Let me give you an example. On the next day, which is August 3rd, the Treasury will take in $12 billion in revenues, but it will still owe $32 billion in revenues. Let me tell you what that includes. It includes $23 billion in Social Security payments. I understand 45 million checks are ready to go out during these days. It's $2.2 billion for Medicare. It's $1.8 billion for education, and it's $1.4 billion for defense. If the debt ceiling is not raised by August 2nd, or if we only reach an agreement for a short-term extension, the already spooked credit rating agencies could react unfavorably. And this is the problem. You want to go back to this same situation in 6 months and go through this all over again? It makes no sense. And if the marketplace wants stability and constancy, they're clearly not going to get it, knowing that this is going to be coming up in 6 months again. Moody's has said it's possible. Our credit rating would go down with a short-term increase and warned that an agreement should get us through the year 2012. All right, don't pay attention to it. But that warning is out there. It's going to take getting through the year 2012, according to at least one of the rating houses. Fitch has said a deficit deal must be credible and sustainable, or United States ratings could still be downgraded. Does anybody believe it's credible and sustainable to do this thing for 6 months and be right back where we are today? I don't think so. Standard & Poor's has said it may lower the country's long-term credit rating if it concludes that future adjustments to the debt ceiling are likely to be the subject of political maneuvering. Not my words, their words. You want to go through this in 6 months again with the same results and creating all of the uncertainty for the 6 months between now and then? I don't think so. In other words, these rating agencies have very real questions about the willingness and ability of this Congress and the administration to timely honor scheduled debt obligations. Now, I have to say this, and I've been here for 9 years. I have never seen a time when Republicans just do not want to come to an agreement with this president. The president, I think, by any standard, has bent over backwards. And still, Republicans walk away from the negotiating table. Well, let me tell you, I've done a lot of negotiations in my time, big labor strikes and work stoppages. I would ask unanimous consent for 5 more minutes.
Is there objection?
I was given an 11:10 time and saw that we were alternating. I've got a conference call that starts. I'm glad for you to finish. I hate for you, but if you could make it even shorter than that, it'd be much
All right, how about
I have people waiting.
3 minutes?
Okay.
Is there objection to the unanimous consent request for 3 minutes? Without objection, so ordered.
There have been 2 months of negotiations with the Vice President, and Majority Leader Cantor walked out. There were negotiations with the President and Speaker Boehner. Boehner walked out. House Republicans do not like Simpson-Bowles, nor do they like the Gang of Six plan. These are the 2 big plans which offer a solution for the future. Instead, they want massive cuts to Medicare, Medicaid, Social Security, and discretionary spending, and ask absolutely nothing from those Americans who are doing very well in this economy, actually the top 1%. Well, I represent 37 million people. California is bigger than 21 states and the District of Columbia put together. 15 to 20 million people in my state depend on programs that the Republicans want to take a meat axe to. Not a scalpel, but a meat axe. SSI, Social Security, Medicaid, and Medicare. We've gotten these numbers. We've looked at them for overlapping, and I can truthfully say the number is 15 to 20 million. Well, look, I want to know how a cut is going to affect these programs. We could do this if we agreed to take 6 months, draft in bill language the Gang of Six, mandate the hearings, fast-track a bill to the floor of the Senate. Every member of this body knows it's bill language that spells out what you need to look out for. I need to look out what happens to the Medicare provider tax, because so many hospitals in the state depend on it. If it lasts to 2014, it's okay, but I don't know. So I very strongly believe there is a solution and that reasonable people can work it out, and I hope the leadership of this body will talk with the leadership of the other body. I thank you, Senator Corker. Thank you for your courtesy, and I yield the floor.
Mr. President.
Senator from Tennessee is recognized.
Thank you. Mr. President, it's interesting. I have some of the same concerns, maybe with different outcomes from the senator from California, but I agree. We have not done our work. Over the course of the last little over a year, I've been traveling the state of Tennessee and making citizens aware of the unsustainable deficits that our country has. I'm sure people on the other side of the aisle have been doing the same thing. And after town hall meetings all across our state, in almost every forum that you can imagine, I'm sure the presiding officer has done the same, people are very aware in my state, as they are across the country, with the fact that we are on an unsustainable course. I mean, we're now beginning to have investor publications, Wall Street Journal this morning, which wrote an editorial about the fact that no matter what we do regarding the actual proposals before us today, it's likely that our country is going to be downgraded. So here we are, faced with a situation where the types of legislation that we're looking at in both chambers, I might add, in both chambers, probably will take us to a place where our country's debt is downgraded. I want to first applaud both leaders, Senator Reid for bringing forth a proposal today, over the last few days, Representative Boehner, the leader of the House, for doing the same on the House side. And then what I want to say about that is, while to me they don't meet the goals or don't meet the tests that our country needs to have met at this time, at least we're finally talking about proposals that will reduce spending in this country and put us back on a sustainable path. So I appreciate the leadership of both bodies. Finally, after many, many months, we're finally on the right topic. And what I've said all along is that as we approach the debt ceiling, we need to dramatically change the character of spending in this country. My concern is that our work is not quite done. I mean, the fact is that there's no question the deadline that's coming up that everybody agrees is at least the minimum is on August the 2nd. I don't think there's any dispute that we have until August 2nd to deal with this issue. I also don't think we've yet come up with the solution that we need to come up with to dramatically change the character of spending in this country. And so what I would say is, look, our work is not quite done. The House has a bill that basically reduces spending over the next decade $1 trillion. Candidly, Mr. President, I think we all know that that's not a solution that is going to prevent a downgrade in this country. It does have the goal of kicking this to a select committee of some kind that's going to try to incorporate another $1.8 trillion in cuts. Candidly, that's a big step back from where I think we were a weekend ago, where at least on the cut side, even the President had agreed to at least $3 trillion in cuts. That's our understanding. And so what we have coming out of the House right now is a bill that doesn't cut as much as the President had agreed to last weekend. And so we have on this side a bill that cuts about $1 trillion after it's been scored. And again, I applaud the leader of the Senate for putting forth a bill that at least begins moving us in the right direction. But again, it's $2 trillion short of where the President had been with leaders a week ago, or at least that's our understanding, and I'm pretty sure that that understanding is correct. We also know that the general mantra that's been adopted by Wall Street and by people who are looking at our country around the world is that we need to do something that is at least a $4 trillion solution. So I would say to the senator from California who just spoke, I couldn't agree more. We have not addressed this situation the way that we should. I don't think there's anybody, well, there may be a few. The vast majority of this body does not want to see our country default on its obligations. I don't know of anybody that wants to do that. I've wanted to see dramatic changes in the character of spending for our country, and many people have sought that. Our work is not yet done. And so what I would say is, let's have a short-term extension. There is no question that we do not want the sovereign debt of this country to be downgraded because we default. Nobody wants to see that happen. we're at least finally on the right topic here. We're talking about spending reductions. We certainly haven't done the work necessary to achieve the goal that we need to achieve in this body. But I couldn't agree more. Let's have a short-term extension. Let's extend another week or 2 weeks or 3 weeks. A lot of people say, well, you know, the fact is that that will roil the markets. Well, what I would say is I don't think it will roil the markets. I think they're used to us waiting until an hour before the deadline to work out a solution. I think that's become customary, if you will, in the United States Senate and the House of Representatives. But what I would say is that if we don't do the work now, we have an historic opportunity right now, the whole world, the whole country, all of our citizens who are frustrated, the House and Senate are all focused on one thing, and that is what kind of package can we put forth to actually cause our country to be more solvent at this time. We're finally on the right topic, and yet we haven't even, in these aspirational bills that are laid out, we know that with all the actuarial assumptions that exist with Medicare and Social Security and Medicaid, that if we don't touch trying to make them solvent for the longer haul, that we really haven't even done our work. And the bills that are before us don't even have as an aspirational goal. For instance, the House bill that's coming over with a select committee that I know Senator Reid and Senator McConnell have been involved in, and I thank them for their work, but it doesn't even lay out that one of the things that we're looking at there is ensuring that Social Security is actuarially sound. And I think these young pages who potentially down the road, not potentially, hopefully, will benefit from Social Security, I think they'd like to know that during this historic time we're actually looking at the real issue. So what I'm afraid of, Mr. President, is we are missing the opportunity for this to be the seminal moment that we all thought it was going to be, because we don't yet have a product that solves the problem. The product that we're looking at in both bodies, and I thank the leaders of both bodies for bringing them forth, that product does not meet the test. It doesn't dramatically change the character of spending in Washington. It doesn't even stave off a downgrade in U.S. sovereign debt. And so we're on the brink of actually doing something great for our country, and because we now have our country's focus and everybody in these bodies are focused on this problem, let's have a short-term extension. I agree. Let's don't default. Let's move back a week or 2 weeks or 3 weeks. But let's don't miss this historic opportunity to do something great for our country, which is exactly what we're doing now. It's hard for me to believe, seriously, that what we have before us is a $1 trillion down payment. It's also hard for me to believe, candidly, that we're going to set up a select committee that's going to report back in 4 or 5 months when all of us know what the issues are. We understand the math. I know we get ridiculed a lot for the way we act in this body, but I think most of us, candidly, pretty well understand what the solutions are. And we all know that nobody really gets to work on anything around here until there's an imminent deadline. So even with this committee that's being potentially set up by mutual discussion down the road, I know there's a lot of negotiations, to me they should report back. I agree with the senator from California. Let's report back at the end of this fiscal year, September 30th. There's no reason to wait. And let's see if that type of bill were to pass, where you have a two-stage process. Let's go ahead and get the work out of the way. But I want to go back to the bigger picture for just a moment, and we'll conclude momentarily. We have an opportunity right now, but we've never been focused in the way that we are right now in the 4.5 years that I've been here on something as important as this, as it relates to us getting our house in order. We have never been this focused. And what I'm afraid of, in the name of political efficacy, people saying, hey, look, let's take what we can get and get on out of here so we don't mess up our potential on both sides of the aisle for the 2012 elections. Take what you've got on both sides. I mean, basically, let's think about it. For the other side of the aisle, the way all the proposals that are before us are laid out, there's really no dealing with trying to make the entitlements sustainable. And so they can run in 2012 on the entitlement issue. And with all the proposals that are laid out right now, we really don't deal with spending appropriately. And so, you know, our country probably is going to have its debt downgraded so Republicans can run on the fact that we haven't reduced spending enough. And so if you really look at it, this really works well for everybody except the citizens of our country. Again, we're finally on the right topic, which is a rarity here. We're finally focused on the problem. We have two bills that don't go far enough, and again, I applaud both the Democratic leader and the Republican leader for putting forth proposals. We all know it doesn't do what it needs to do, either proposal. We know the aspirational goals of each proposal don't take us far enough. So what I would say to all, I agree, let's don't default. Let's don't bump up against August the 3rd. Let's pass a short-term time extension. Let's take us through the end of August or the first 2 weeks in September, or let's take a week. But let's finish our work in this body. Let's don't miss this seminal opportunity where everybody in this country and everybody in this world is looking at how undisciplined we've been and the opportunity that we have before us to actually be disciplined and send a signal to the world that our future is not the future that Greece is seeing today. Our future is the continuation of American exceptionalism all around this world, and we are squandering that opportunity right now in this body at a time when we're finally focused on the right topic. Mr. President, I yield the floor. I notice the absence of a quorum.
Clerk will call the roll.
Mr. Akaka.
Mr. President, I ask unanimous consent that the quorum call be rescinded.
Without objection, so ordered.
I thank the presiding officer, as I always do. Tom Harkin is on his way. Senator Harkin is on his way from the meeting you and I were just at, because we both want to talk more about this National Mediation Board crisis and also the fact that the FAA is on hold, that we can't do anything with it. And what the House did, see, one of the revelations of the modern era, which hopefully will last only a couple of years, is that the folks in the House are willing to say no to the very end. In other words, a question I would raise is that my plan is to raise the stakes on the airlines, doing quite dreadful things to them, in hopes that they will engage with the House members to say that we have to have an FAA bill. As I said yesterday, all I seek is a clean bill of extension. That's been done 20 times just on this FAA bill. It's taken us 4 years and we haven't been able to reauthorize it. There's some things to be worked out, but they can all be worked out. So the House sent over a message saying that they didn't like what we were doing on the Essential Air Service. Well, the presiding officer knows what the essential air service means for rural communities. We have to have that in order to have communities that have an economic future of any kind at all. So but on the other hand, we've been willing to make reforms. In fact, the reforms that we've suggested are more dramatic than the reforms that the House has suggested. Put a cap on the number of airports, some quite dramatic things that I absolutely hate doing in order to try to get agreement on that subject. But what's more interesting, Mr. President, is that's not really what they care about. Mr. Mica, who's my counterpart in the House, has often said he doesn't really have a dog in the Essential Air Service fight. And so yesterday I was meeting with him and Secretary LaHood, who is completely with the Senate in our desire to get this done and to break the intransigence of the House. And, you know, my counterpart simply said, I said, why did you send that over when that's not what you really care about? He said, well, sometimes, you know, it's just a little political thing. And I wasn't shocked by that because that's why I knew he had done it. But what it says is that they are willing to tank the Federal Aviation Administration unless the Senate caves to their position on the National Mediation Board, which would undo 75 years of labor law and which would take an extraordinary situation which Senator Harkin, when he gets here, if he gets here, is going to talk more about. But the principle that they want and that they like is the fact that if you have an election, let's say it could be a union election, it could be any kind of an election, but let's just say for the purpose of this, a union election, and people don't show up to vote, as is always the case, then those people who don't show up to vote, their vote is automatically characterized as a no vote on the idea of certifying to get a union. Now, this is purely the work of Delta. Most of the legacy airlines are unionized. Delta is not. Delta has, their CEO makes $9 million a year, their top management another $20 million a year. I mean, they practically could pay for the whole Essential Air Service program themselves. But they don't want to fool around with this language to protect their anti-worker ambitions. So they've had 4 union elections in the last several years. They have prevailed. The airline has prevailed in all 4 of those elections. But they still want this language changed so that if you don't vote, that you're put down as a no vote. That is, not to be able to organize. That's un-American. It's unprecedented in American history. And it goes against, as I said, 75 years of labor law. Now, that's a very, very dangerous thing. So what we have to do is to try and make it clear that, frankly, the other airlines have been rather tepid in their support of my position on this. And airlines are a close group, and they tend to stay together. They've got to stop that. They've got to make the House understand that if they persist in this rule, that we will really have a federal aviation system that will shut down altogether. And I'm talking about air traffic controllers. I'm talking about the whole deal. It's not a long process. It's a horrible process. It's an anti-worker process, which they are dumping in our laps. They want to see that happen. They're willing to see that happen. They will not compromise on the National Mediation Board. They will not compromise. They've said that. And I've often talked with my counterpart over there, and he says, well, I don't make those decisions. Those are made at a higher pay grade. He uses that word. And, you know, you sort of, why does somebody run for public office if they simply take orders from other people? Well, that's sort of the way they do things over there in the House. But it's extremely dangerous. You know, the truth lies in the fact that the House provision that cuts the Essential Air Service program by $16 million, that's what it does. And at the same time, the House has been willing to let $150 million drain from the Airport Trust Fund in less than a week. Every day we do not get this bill resolved, $25 million drops out of the airport trust fund, which is flush for now, but is becoming very unflush very quickly. The FAA extensions are very necessary. They're not something which people walk around here talking about all the time, but if they find that they don't have flights to get to their homes on the West Coast or the South or anywhere else, they will be very angry. People will be very angry. I don't know of any alternative but to ratchet up the pressure, to make those who are blocking this understand that they are causing a national disaster and they need to back off from that position. They've said they will not. Well, will that be the final solution? It may very well be, and we have to understand that. But you cannot negotiate something which is so anti-worker. You cannot negotiate that. The President has said he will veto it if it appears in the bill in any form. The House has voted for it. The Senate has voted against it. We've been very clear that it cannot pass over here and will not pass over here. So why are they playing that game? The airlines are not now even paying for their use of the national aerospace system. The carriers also do not appear to care about the impact on the dedicated FAA workforce that serves them. Once again, 4,000 already having been furloughed. And most of the airlines are not even passing any savings on to the customers they serve. And what do I say that? Because they're having a tax holiday now, because our extension ran out, so all of a sudden they don't have to pay taxes on jet fuel and a number of other things, so they're getting a lot of money. But what would you do with that money? Would you keep it for yourself, or would you turn it over to the trust fund, or would you keep ticket prices the same and not raise them? Well, they keep it. Frontier Airlines, I think Alaska Airlines, Virgin, I think, all have kept their fares exactly where they were. They are trying to protect the consumer. Delta and the other airlines are raising ticket prices as fast as they can, even though they are getting, because the time is run out on the agreement, they're getting endless millions of dollars. They're choosing to keep it and make a profit for themselves. That's unconscionable behavior in terms of national policy. What are the real benefits to Delta from what they're doing? How badly were they harmed by the decision, the NMB decision? After the change, several unionization votes were held among components of their workforce, which I've already said. None of those units voted to organize. So what is their game? It is a game. It's politics. It's theology. And you can't let that stand, Mr. President. You cannot allow people to get furloughed who are serious about their jobs, who are engineers and technical people, the first 4,000. Many of them will not come back. They will just choose to figure, well, they're never going to get this thing settled. They'll go out and find other jobs, and they'll be able to get other jobs. It's unconscionable. It's almost, you can't believe that you're in this situation, that you're in some Disney world somewhere where people just don't take life seriously and don't take policy seriously. So I just want to reiterate that the Senate appointed conferees, which is sort of necessary to try and reach resolution, on the very day that the House sent over its FAA package for us to consider. We appointed conferees. More than 100 days later, 100 days later, the House still drags its feet. The House has still not named any conferees. So what am I to make of that? They're not serious about this. So if they're not serious about it, do we then buckle because they're not serious, or do we stand up for what is right and what is fair for the people who work for the Federal Aviation and also, frankly, for consumers of aviation all over this country? I mean, I'll tell you, you wait until some of these air traffic control systems shut down, the towers shut down, because there's nobody to man them. And then business, American business, and these airlines are going to understand how bad it's going to be. That's the only policy I know how to adopt, Mr. President, is to try and drive home to them what they're actually doing to their own futures. They will shut themselves down if they continue on their course. Now, we can still get this process working again, but we need to get the FAA stable first. We should pass a clean extension. That's which we've done forever. All extensions are clean. Senator Corker was just talking about a clean extension on something else. We should pass a clean extension, then get to work finding a compromise in our remaining differences. Mr. President, I would yield the floor and wait the presence of Senator Harkin, who will be speaking on this subject. Thank you. Note the absence of a quorum.
Clerk will call the roll.
Mr. Akaka.
Quorum be dispensed with.
Without objection.
I first, Madam President, want to thank Senator Rockefeller for his leadership on the FAA issue. It's so important. in rural areas. It's so important for a work to retain and train a workforce. It's so important for airline service generally in cities as large as the Cleveland, Cincinnati, and Columbus airports, and in smaller communities where this matters, as Senator Rockefeller said, it absolutely matters for economic development. And people in big cities might make fun of small airports that, you know, they don't have all the, all the hustle and bustle, but we do know that medium-sized and smaller airports matter a great deal. With the refusal of the House to take up a clean extension of FAA, more than 4,000 employees have been furloughed. Dozens of construction projects have come to a halt. In this economy, for some radicals in the House of Representatives to decide, because they've got a political mission and an ideology that doesn't quite fit with the majority of Americans, they're going to, again, hold hostage something that just simply needs to be done, and that is what's called reauthorization of FAA. And this many employees have been furloughed for who knows how long. You know, Senator Rockefeller said some may look elsewhere for jobs. These are very skilled technicians and engineers and others. And what it means to these construction projects. FAA helps to pay all over the country for modernization of airports. And we've all heard stories. I don't recall that I've ever seen it, but we've all heard stories of the Beijing or the Shanghai airport or some of these airports that have, I've not seen them in the last many years, the technology and the modern features of those airports, and, you know, we've got to keep up, and this is the exactly wrong thing to do. The unemployment rate in the construction industry is more than double the national average, yet we're idling cranes and we're idling bulldozers, all because of a political mission and ideology that some members of the House, some radical members of the House have decided to inflict on us. The clean extension of FAA has been done 20 times. All of a sudden it isn't. I hope the House gets serious. I hope the appointees, I hope they appoint conferees and come to the table and work this out. And I appreciate very much Senator Rockefeller's leadership in this. He is he's making a difference on this, but our House colleagues need to follow. Madam President, I ask for a division on these remarks versus the next in the congressional record.
Without objection.
Thank you. I want to talk also about another issue where we should have just done a clean extension, as we've done dozens of times in this country. The past 3 decades alone, we've avoided default by addressing the debt limit 38 times. 34 of those were with Republican presidents. That's almost 90% of the time we have raised the debt ceiling, more precisely avoided default. It's been under Republican presidents. A lot of us didn't like it. We maybe made a public statement saying we didn't like their fiscal policy, but we never stood in the way. We never tried to take the government hostage or each other hostage by saying, almost like children, if I don't get my way, then I'm going to block this and I'm going to stop. I'm going to potentially throw our financial system and our economy into turmoil. I mean, what kind of behavior is that for adults? And then when I hear Speaker Boehner in some of his radical cheerleaders on the far political right say that we should do this again in 6 months, I just wonder, what are they possibly thinking? That when we go through this right now, I mean, I spend a lot of time, Madam President, with manufacturers around my state. I love seeing things made. My state is the 3rd largest manufacturing state in the country, exceeded in production only by California, 3 times our population, and Texas, twice our population. I talk to manufacturers, and some of them aren't investing now for a variety of reasons. Mostly they don't see the demand for products because the demand is still anemic in our society, in our economy, for companies to grow. But they also talk about the uncertainty if we don't move forward. They talk about the uncertainty in the economic environment. Well, this is the worst kind of uncertainty we're going to inject into our economy if we're going to say, let's do this in 6 months. Do you think, Madam President, you think anybody in North Carolina or Ohio or around the state, around the country, any businesses are thinking this is a great time to invest, right when Moody's and Standard & Poor's might downgrade us, right when we don't know what's going to happen in the next week with a potential default. Do you think anybody really is going to make a major investment decision right now? Of course they're not. So let's do it again in 6 months. I mean, I just can't. When I heard Speaker Boehner, and I like John Boehner personally. He's from my state. You know, we do some things. Our offices obviously work together in places like Butler County, Preble County, and Dayton, Cincinnati areas. But I would have thought people would have laughed when he said, yeah, let's do this again in 6 months, because we don't have a jobs problem to worry about. We don't have, clearly we should get this done with and focus, and that means cutting the budget. I understand that. We've got to work towards a balanced budget. We knew how to do that in the 1990s and the early 90s. President Clinton, and I came to the House the year he was elected president, we faced a terrible budget situation and an unemployment situation. But you know what? We cut spending. We increased taxes appreciably for only a relatively few number of people. The wealthiest people in our society. We continued to make investments in education and health care and infrastructure in our economy. We had almost 8 years, not quite, maybe 7 years, some months of regular economic growth, and 21 million new jobs were created. And so we know how to do this, but this crowd that wants to hold the government hostage, saying if you don't do it exactly our way, we're going to let the government go in default, and once we solve that, let's do it again in 6 months. I just think, Madam President, it doesn't make sense. What we should be doing instead is really focusing, and I know what an important manufacturing state the presiding officer represents in North Carolina, as in Ohio, and you know, the focus on manufacturing, that we're still a country that makes things. My state is particularly a state that makes things. And my state, in 2000, the year after the what's called the American Recovery Act passed, my state got more new jobs in clean energy than any state in the United States of America. My state is a leader in aerospace. It's a leader in auto and steel and chemicals and cement and paper and aluminum and glass, yet we're also in the kind of traditional industries, yet we're also, as I said, a leader in solar in Toledo, Ohio, and other places. We're a leader in wind turbine component manufacturing, especially in Northeast, but all over Ohio. We're a leader in aerospace, as I mentioned. We're a leader in biomedical and biotech, in large part because we have great universities and great teaching hospitals. Really, I was going to say prominently in Northeast Ohio, but also Columbus, also Cincinnati, also Toledo, all over our state. So clearly, Madam President, we know how to do these things. But what we've seen in the past 3 decades is a shift in our nation. 30 years ago, manufacturing was 26%, 25, 26, 27% of our gross domestic product. So basically 1/4 of the dollars in our economy were all about manufacturing. And that created great wealth, because the way to create wealth is to make something, to grow something, or to mine something preeminently. So 30 years ago, the manufacturing was, was some 23, 24, 25, 26% of our GDP. Financial services was only 11% in those days. Today, it's almost the reverse. Financial services makes up about 25%, 22%, and manufacturing makes up only about 11% of our GDP, and even a slightly smaller percent of our workforce. So why does this matter? It matters because we know when we make things, they creates wealth. Manufacturing jobs pay 20% more on average than service jobs. We know the difference between retail versus making steel, or the difference between fast food restaurant work versus making cars or chemicals or glass or biotech. We know that manufacturing jobs have strong multiplier effects. So if you've got an auto company, and let me give an example. The Chevy Cruze is a car that my daughter just bought one, it's by and large an Ohio car. It would not have happened if we hadn't done the auto rescue that so many of my colleagues opposed for, again, ideological reasons, not substantive, practical, let's make it work reasons. Nonetheless, we know that the auto industry is coming back, and we know manufacturing jobs have increased, not far too anemically, but they've increased over the last year. But the Chevy Cruze is the engines made in Defiance, Ohio, and the bumpers made in Northwood, Ohio, and the transmissions made in Toledo, Ohio, and the steel comes out of Cleveland, Ohio, for much of the car. The aluminum wheels come out of also of Cleveland, Ohio. The stamping is done in Parma, Ohio. Some of the other stamping is done in Lordstown, Ohio. The assembly is done in Lordstown, Ohio. 5,000 people working just on the assembly alone. So that's the multiplier effect. When you assemble in Toledo, you assemble the Jeep. Chrysler assembles the Jeep in Toledo. 3 years ago, only 50% of the components for the Jeep were American-made. Today, over 70% of the components for the Jeep are American-made. So we know that manufacturing creates all kinds of jobs, making 20% more on average than service jobs. Since the beginning of the recession, though, we still see profits at large financial institutions and other service firms increase, but our nation's unemployment rate's still hovering around 9%. So when profits go up for these financial services firms, and I appreciate J.P. Morgan Chase in Columbus, Ohio. I met with their top person in Ohio just this week, just moving from Cleveland to Columbus, and I know the important work they do in my state. I know they provide thousands and thousands and thousands of jobs. That's all a good thing. But I also know in an economy which is not paying attention to manufacturing, you don't get the multiplier effects, you don't get the higher wages, you don't get the employment growth than you might get otherwise. That's why when Senator Rockefeller yesterday and I convened a meeting where Senator Whitehouse, Senator Jack Reed, Senator Schumer and Klobuchar and Feinstein and others attended, we talked about a real national manufacturing strategy. That means closing the skills gap. We have a lot of jobs in places like Iowa and North Carolina, Ohio, where they go unfilled because we haven't well enough connected worker training with those jobs, with the needs. We need to pursue better tax and trade policies. We need to pay special attention to manufacturing. And Madam President, as we yesterday, this House of Representatives, the Senate, and then the Senate will send to the House passed legislation unanimously that said when the government buys American flags, rather than 50% than a requirement that 50% of them be made in the U.S., the requirement now is that 100% be made in the U.S. Why don't we do that? Why don't we put more focus on made in the USA? It'll matter for us. It matters for our national pride on flags, to be sure, but it matters for our communities. It matters for our companies. It matters for our workers. Madam President, I yield the floor. And I suggest you have some support.